For those of you who don't know about the 1619 Project, really briefly, it started with a New York Times piece about how the origins of the United States was actually not the Declaration of Independence and the Revolution that was the origin of the United States, but 1619 when the first slaves were brought from Africa to the colonies at the time, and slavery was central to the founding of America's history, and really it minimizes any founding principles that are written down and any of the actual things founding fathers said, and really emphasizes that it tries to paint slavery as a uniquely American and uniquely woven into the foundation of America, and then by doing so undermining the principles of freedom and individual liberty and all the good things that America was founded upon, that it didn't live up to fully until it abolished slavery and got away and got rid of Jim Crow laws and other abhorrent things. And I thought today would be a good day, Carrie, if you don't mind, can I read a few excerpts? I just looked up, I did not cherry pick and look up specifically abolitionists that liked the founding principles of the country. I just looked up top abolitionist speeches. Not all of them have speeches that are transcribed that you can really parse. But I looked up abolitionist speeches, and I'd like to read, if it's okay, I'd like to read a couple excerpts, because the point I'm going to make here is, if you'll notice, the abolitionists, I don't know if all of them, but the major ones were appealing to, they weren't rejecting the founding of America. They weren't saying
they appealed. They appealed to it.
They were appealing to the principles that were outlined in the founding documents. And so, if you don't mind, I'm just going to read a couple. And
please do. This is something great. I'm glad. I wish I had thought of this. This is great to do in honor of Juneteenth.
I think so, because look, at the end of the day, I guess the preface to this is individualism is the antidote to slavery, and individualism is, instead of having a race war, we should be uniting against the tyrants, the authoritarians that are trying to destroy individual rights in this country and subjugate all of us. And they're afraid of us uniting in individualism, in freedom, against them. And so they're busy trying to conjure up a race war between us. And we're smarter than that. We don't have to succumb to this kind of crap. So here we go. Henry Highland Garnet, in an 1843 address. I have three speeches I'm going to quote. One is his, one's William Lloyd Garrison, and the last one is Frederick Douglass, which is my favorite one. So William Lloyd Garrison in 1854 in Boston, he was the most prominent. By 1854, he was probably the most. Let's not start with him. Sorry. Let's start with Henry Highland, 1843. He had an address to the slaves of the United States. Now, this address is actually quite stirring. He's telling the slaves to revolt. He's saying, you need to fight this physically. It's a moving speech, and it's a morally what's the word? Praiseworthy, laudable. It's a morally laudable speech. It's a good message, and it's a strong message. But even in this message, I'm just going to read a couple excerpts. He's talking about prior to the actual founding, but in the colonial system. He says, the propagators of the system, or their immediate ancestors, very soon discovered its growing evil and its tremendous wickedness, and secret promises were made to destroy it. So he's talking about people saying they're going to destroy slavery. The gross inconsistency of a people holding slaves who had themselves ferried o'er the wave for freedom's sake was too apparent to be entirely overlooked. The voice of freedom cried, emancipate yourselves. So what he's saying is, even prior to the founding, people recognized the inconsistency between the principles of freedom that were being argued for and the institution of slavery that was being tolerated and even supported in some cases. Later he says, the Declaration, now he's talking about the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration was a glorious document. Sages admired it, and the patriotic of every nation reverenced the God-like sentiments which it contained. When the power of government returned to their hands, did they emancipate the slaves? So he's saying, it's a great document, But did they emancipate the slaves? No. They added new links to our chains. Were they ignorant of the principles of liberty? Again, he's not fighting against principles of liberty. Were they ignorant against the principles of liberty? Certainly they were not. The sentiments of the revolutionary orders fell in burning eloquence upon their hearts, and with one voice they cried, "Liberty or death." Oh, what a sentence was that! It ran from soul to soul like electric fire and nerved the arm of thousands to fight in the holy cause of freedom. Among the diversity of opinions that are entertained in regard to physical resistance, there are but a few found to gainsay that stern declaration. We are among those who do not. So he's saying, hey, liberty or death is a beautiful, noble, just phrase, and he's not opposed to liberty or death. He's using this to spur them to actual physical action. And then finally he says, think of the underlying glory that hangs around the ancient name of Africa, and forget not. Now, he's talking to blacks, by the way. He's talking to slaves. This is one thing unique about his address is he was talking directly to slaves about revolt. He says, forget not that you are native-born American citizens, and as such you are justly entitled to all the rights that are granted to the freest. That's his argument. That's his argument. It's not tear down the Constitution. It's not the Constitution and freedom are tools of white supremacy. It is, you are owed these things. All men are owed these things. You included. Rise up and seize them like you deserve. That's his message. It's a beautiful message. I assume it was very powerful.